Good evening and welcome along to your Sunday night edition of MesmePolitics. My name is Toby Lepati Mesme and we are live with you for the next half hour. It's just gone 7 p.m. on the 3rd of January 2021. All sorts to come on today's show as we go through the latest in UK and US politics from a leftist perspective. Okay, so at the top of the show, I want to very quickly draw attention to the situation surrounding Julian Assange. Tomorrow, whether or not his extradition to the USA is, taken into effect, will be decided. He's clearly been mistreated in prison, and I want to make a very succinct point on this. If Julian Assange goes, there is no real justice in society. Donald Trump should do something anti-establishment, one of the only anti-establishment things he'll have done during the course of his presidency, and pardon Julian Assange. I know he won't. I know he doesn't have the balls for it, but he should. And I want to hear from the Labour Party and from any civil liberty-based activists in the Tory Party. I want to hear people speak up, because Julian Assange is all of us. If he is prosecuted and mistreated for exposing the secrets of the powerful, solidarity with Julian Assange. Free Assange. Okay, so on tonight's show, lots coming up. Keir Starmer endorses a new national lockdown in 24 hours. Mike Pence is on board with the coup being undertaken in the United States. And at the top of the hour, a polling meltdown for Boris Johnson. Just a quick note. The 4 p.m. thing was obviously not Starmer quitting, but there was a 4 p.m. thing. It was the endorsement of the national lockdown, which makes me think that was possibly on the cards for a while, and they've been sitting on their hands. Anyway, the public are deeply unhappy with the government's handling of the coronavirus pandemic and the Brexit negotiations, a damning new poll suggests. The poll predicts that if a general election were held tomorrow, neither the Conservatives nor Labour would win an outright majority. Disturbingly for Boris Johnson, the survey says the Tories would lose 81 seats, wiping out the 80-seat majority they won in December of 2019. It gives the first detailed insight into the public's perception of Johnson's handling of the Brexit talks and the pandemic, amid fears that Britain is heading into a third national lockdown. The Prime Minister is on course to lose his own seat of Uxbridge and Ruislip South if the insight is accurate. This is a survey of 22,000 people by research data company Focal Data using the multi-level regression and post-stratification method, MRP, that is said to be more accurate than conventional polling. Labour would gain 82 seats with 282, and the Tories would be on 284 seats. Results in Scotland would see the Scottish National Party achieve a near-complete sweep, winning 57 of the 59 Scottish seats. The poll also predicts the Liberal Democrats would be reduced to a mere 2 seats on 9% of the vote in Bath and in Kingston and Surbiton, down from the current 11. 1 in 4 voters who supported the Lib Dems in 2019 have said they will switch allegiance to Labour. Many of the seats that Labour would gain are in the north of England, Midlands and Wales, part of the Red Wall collapse that swept the Tories to power at the last election, according to the Sunday Times. The Tories would cling on to just 8 of these seats, Labour on 37.7% of the vote, with the Tories on 35.6%, the Lib Dems on 8.7%, and the Green Party on a very high for them, 6.9%. This is, beginning. We began 2020 with a 26-point lead. We begin 2021 with this, a 26-point lead for the Tories, obviously. And the founder of Focal Data says, 1 year on from their stunning general election triumph, it is clear that the Conservatives already have a lot of work to do if they are to replicate their 2019 success in future elections. the SNP would appear to be the real winners. Not only did they win all but 2 Scottish constituencies, but the most likely outcome is a Labour-SNP coalition government, which would have an overall majority of just over 20 seats. Tory supporters were quick to point out on social media that the survey period ended before news of the Brexit deal was announced, and claim there is evidence of a swing back to the Conservatives in the few days that have transpired since. Right, let's delve into the meat of this, shall we? Well, this is worse for Boris Johnson than I thought. It's a very comprehensive poll. You can take more than this than you can from, the weekly opinion poll or something. But, this is bad for Johnson. This is really bad. Boris Johnson will be, swearing at the TV. This is bad. This will frighten Tory HQ. It'll frighten the 1922 committee. It'll frighten the Tory backbenchers, because a lot of them will be out of a job. This is the public opinion towards Johnson is looking worse than I thought it was towards the end of the year. The disasters that unfolded in December have tipped the scale back in favour of Labour. A new Tory leader may be able to reset this. This may be old news, and like when David Cameron was replaced by Theresa May, or like when Theresa May was replaced by Boris Johnson, a Labour lead and supposed government meltdown will amalgamate itself back into, Tory hegemony. Entirely plausible. And yes, there was the Tories. I don't think they had lost their lead after the referendum, but after Cameron lost the referendum, it was really close. And then May comes in, and we ended up with 20-point Tory leads until the 2017 election. This is the state of play is bad. A new leader may reset it, but if these sentiments persist, and if disasters unfold further into 2021, it may permanently brand the government with malaise, as it did for the major government. The figurehead changing won't switch that, and maybe the Tories will be unable to eke their way out in the way that they would hope they would be able to. This holds up for Labour, however you look at it. So yes, people are quick to point this out. 4% for the Brexit Party on this. That 4% could go back to the Tories, or 3% of that. You could say the same thing for Labour. We see the votes fracturing out, and you see the 7% for the Greens. Some of that will come back. Disillusioned left-wingers. If Keir Starmer works to get them back, presumably he'll get them back. And even worst case scenario in terms of the Tories, regaining some votes, Labour regaining some votes. Labour would broadly be a similar result, even if 3% of that went back to the Tories and then 3% of that went back from the Greens. There'd have to be a very unlikely set of circumstances for it to, tighten to the Tories' advantage. The race would tighten, but it would tighten neutrally as opposed to in the favour of one party or the other. Meaning, the probability of a Labour SNP government is plausible. The most likely outcome in 2024 remains, in my mind, a Tory majority. Maybe slightly grown, maybe substantially shrunk, somewhere in that area, right? However, in second place and rapidly gaining in proximity to the most likely outcome, I would say, is a Labour SNP government with a small majority. There's a very plausible outcome, and an outcome that would propel Keir Starmer into Downing Street. The Greens are taking votes from Labour. They need to mitigate this. They need to reach back out to the left. Hopefully, policy announcements in this year, not the new year, this year, will energise it. Will energise the base, bring people back into the fold. That's what we've got to hope will happen. It looks like it probably will, and if it does, and when it does, that will be a further boost. But right now, this should be a wake-up call. Right now, there is serious discontent with Keir Starmer among much of the base, and Labour cannot, I can't say this enough, Labour cannot win without the left, and when they set out to destroy the left, they lose elections. See Neil Kinnock. All credit to Starmer for this. He needs to consolidate the vote, as I say, reach out. But all credit, this is a big achievement. However, The man is basically the beneficiary of circumstances beyond his control. He's the beneficiary of the chaos. He looks statesmanlike. He stood there. Votes are drifting towards him. This is not the magic of Keir Starmer more than it is the aggravation felt in the hearts of the British people in the middle of a national emergency that the government is cocking up to an unholy, insane degree. As I say, the splitting of the vote, not too bad for Labour. And finally, the Liberal Democrats, completely irrelevant. They destroyed their credentials as a progressive party. They lost the European battle. There's nothing for them now. Ed Davey is the final nail in the coffin. I don't see a way back for them. Because Keir Starmer is everything that Liberal voters want in a Liberal leader. So why would Lib Dem voters either not vote Tory or Labour? I don't know. To be honest, if I was a Lib Dem voter, I think I'd just vote Keir Starmer, surely. He's everything they want. Mr. People's Vote, Liberal lawyer from London, respectable. I'm more worried about the red wall, but it looks like that might not be a problem either. So, looking good for Keir Starmer, looking good. Now, we'll quickly hear what Boris Johnson had to say on tougher measures in the weeks ahead, amid talk of Tier 5, and Keir Starmer obviously calling for another national lockdown. What did he have to say on Andrew Marr today?
Should parents of primary school children in England send them to school tomorrow morning?
Yes, absolutely, they should in the areas where schools are open. And what we're doing clearly is grappling with a new variant of the virus, which is surging particularly in London and the southeast, and that's why we've had to take exceptional measures for some parts to close primary schools, keep primary schools closed temporarily. Not something anybody wants to do. Look, I understand people's frustrations, I understand people's anxieties, but there is no doubt in my mind that schools are safe. We're entirely reconciled, and this is the crucial point, we're entirely reconciled to doing what it takes to get the virus down.
Let's talk about the AstraZeneca vaccine.
That may involve tougher measures in the weeks ahead.
That's Boris Johnson hinting at tougher measures in the weeks ahead. Read that as national lockdown on the way. This is him on schools.
Should parents of primary school children in England send them to school tomorrow morning?
Yes, absolutely, they should.
It's the exact same clip. Hang on, give me a moment. We just play it on a loop.
For some parts to close primary schools,
Right, the two clips are the same. So that's all you're getting. That's your lot of Johnson. Sorry if you were desperate to hear Boris Johnson's dulcet tones. There's no more of it there, I'm afraid. that's your lot. Now over to the States, and Vice President Mike Pence signalled support on Saturday for a futile Republican bid to overturn the election in Congress next week, after 11 Republican senators and senators-elect said that they would vote to reject President-elect Joseph R. Biden Jr.'s victory when the House and Senate meet to formally certify it. The announcement by the senators and Mr. Pence's move to endorse it reflected a groundswell among Republicans to defy the unambiguous results of the election and indulge President Trump's attempts to remain in power with false claims of voting fraud. Every state in the country has certified the election results after verifying their accuracy, many following post-election audits or hand counts. Judges across the country and a Supreme Court with a Conservative majority have rejected nearly 60 attempts by Mr. Trump and his allies to challenge the results. And now that Mr. Pence nor any of the senators who said they would vote to invalidate the election have made a specific allegation of fraud, instead offering vague suggestions that some unknown wrongdoing might have occurred, and asserting that many of the supporters believe that it has. It poses a political dilemma for Republicans, forcing them to choose between accepting the results of a democratic election and joining their colleagues in displaying unflinching loyalty to President Trump. On Saturday evening, Mark Short, his chief of staff, issued a statement saying that Mr. Pence shares the concerns of millions of Americans about voter fraud and irregularities in the last election. The statement continued, he welcomes the efforts of members of the House and Senate to use the authority they have under the law to raise objections and bring forward evidence before the Congress and the American people on January the 6th. So, Senate Republicans, including 7 senators and 4 who are to be sworn in, on Sunday called for a 10-day audit of the election returns in disputed states. The numbers backing this up are quite worrying. Let's have a listen to this.
Tonight, a striking new measure of President Trump's grip on Republican power. 11 GOP senators and senators-elect, led by Ted Cruz of Texas, say they will object when Congress meets to certify Joe Biden's Electoral College victory in a traditional Capitol Hill ceremony this Wednesday. And the Republican senators are making a new demand that Congress appoint an electoral commission to conduct an emergency 10-day audit of the election returns in what they refer to as the disputed states, but did not name them. The move channels President Trump's unproven allegations.
We cannot allow a completely fraudulent election to stand.
But the courts already rejected numerous claims, and all states certified their own results.
The integrity of our elections remains intact.
Today's new act of Trump loyalty follows Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, who also announced his own plan to object to the certification in order to trigger congressional debate and a series of separate votes. Democrats call these plans outrageous and doomed to fail.
Everyone should understand they will not be successful at overturning the results of the election. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be sworn in on January 20th.
The Cruz Group acknowledged the risks, writing, "We are not naive," while claiming this defense of their motives. "We are acting not to thwart the democratic process, but rather to protect it." Tonight, the Biden transition responded. These baseless claims have already been examined and dismissed by Trump's own attorney general, dozens of courts, and election officials from both parties.
Kelly, is this latest attempt likely to achieve anything?
Well, Jose, I've just heard from the vice president's office, and they say Mike Pence, who will preside over the electoral count tally, he welcomes this use of the laws to object to the results here among Republicans. But other Republicans are coming forward to say this is wrong, including Senators Toomey of Pennsylvania, Murkowski of Alaska. And so far, there is not enough of a sizable protest to overturn the results. Jose?
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking.
See, the fact that we're talking about that being a thing that could plausibly happen is despicable, disgusting. What this should, first of all, on the Mike Pence aspect of this, what this should make clear above anything else is to the liberal media, to the pundit class in the United States, Mike Pence is not sensible. Mike Pence is not moderate. Mike Pence is a bigot, an extremist, and has proven himself to be now thoroughly anti-democratic in his ideology. Mike Pence is not the saviour of the Republican Party, nor is he a standard-bearer fit to hold the office of President of the United States. In fact, I would say complicity in this, failure to call it out, disqualifies the man from any fitness for consideration for the office of President. Full stop. And let's stop idealising him as like the sensible man in the room in the Trump administration. He's very clearly not. The guy's nuts. We know his hideous views on LGBT rights, women's rights, and all manner of other, basic science. But at the same time, it's very dangerous. Anyone who can sit through the Trump administration is either completely out for themselves, which he is, or a very dangerous individual, or both. And I think that would apply here. This effort will fail, but the damage will have been done. And this could go a lot further than we thought it would. 140 members in the House. By the sounds of it, I think that's just about where we were. And more than 10 senators, Republican senators. Obviously, this is a party lines thing. It's very worrying that the results of an election are a party lines thing, but what would you expect in this day and age? But pile on top of all of that and look at it more deeply, it does make my theory, what would happen if there was a huge supermajority of Republicans in both houses of Congress and a Democratic president-elect. Could they overturn it? Wholly plausible. We need serious reform. We need to make sure that to overturn, the results of an election, it needs to have a bipartisan vote. It needs to be over a huge threshold. All these different things that we haven't quite done. There needs to be serious reform of this during the Biden administration, almost as a top priority, because these people are trying to steal an election. Mike Pence, while being unfit to serve, does have strengths as a candidate for the Republicans if he were to run. He does have the veneer of respectability. He has a slightly more compliant slightly more compliant media, particularly when he's standing next to President Trump and many of the other cranks in the Republican Party. However, his views could be the crutch that bring him down. He will not be able to attract, modern affluent voters in the suburbs in the way Republicans once were able to, because of his regressive views that go against much of what these people stand for. That might be compelling enough on its own. And his tone may drive down turnout among the Trumpist base. Who knows? A populist firebrand may topple him. Maybe he'll run. If he does run, he has a pretty good chance of winning the presidency. But he does have strengths, as I say, but there are some key weaknesses there, particularly in 2024. Running someone with Mike Pence's views may not be as easy as it first looks. However, low turnout, voter suppression, the Electoral College, you can see it happening. This whole thing is surreal. In 2016, when President Trump won the election, or 2017, when he was being sworn in, who would have thought the road would lead to here? I didn't. It's far worse than any of us could have possibly predicted. Today, the Trump, apocalypse type predictions were not right. There was a lot of liberal hysteria, but they can feel more vindicated today when a constitutional coup is being attempted and getting far further than it should be. Much of the systems in place rely on good faith from both sides. Well, one side certainly isn't acting in good faith, and another one wasn't when it did the impeachment trial. Full embrace of post-democracy from the Republican Party. They've come to the acceptance that demographics are changing, the country they live in is changing, it's going to turn against them. Therefore, we're just going to suppress the vote and grift this out as long as possible. If you've seen the vote shares for the Senate, 2018, 38% for Mitch McConnell and his senators, and 58% across the country for Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. And the result we got out of that, horrendously, is an increased Republican majority in the Senate. No one can think that's okay. 20-point lead, something to that extent, by the Democrats. Anti-democracies, they're basically trying to create a post-democratic utopia, or dystopia would be a more accurate way of describing it. Now, onto the final story of the day. Keir Starmer. I love a bit about Keir Starmer. The Labour leader has urged Boris Johnson to impose a new national lockdown in England within the next 24 hours to tackle the out-of-control virus. Speaking after the Prime Minister acknowledged that COVID restrictions were probably about to get tougher, he said immediate action must be taken. On Sunday, the UK recorded 454 COVID fatalities within 28 days of a positive test, meaning the official coronavirus death toll topped 75,000. There were a further 55,000 infections, the sixth day in a row that's been above 50,000. Earlier, Johnson said he was fully reconciled to potentially having to, quote, do things in the next few weeks that will be tougher, and that coronavirus curbs were probably about to get tougher. Let's have a listen to what Sir Keir Starmer, leader of Her Majesty's opposition, has to say at this grave time.
Well, the virus is clearly out of control, and there's no good the Prime Minister hinting that further restrictions are coming to place in a week or two or three. That delay has been the source of so many problems. So I say, bringing those restrictions now, national restrictions within the next 24 hours, that has to be the first step to controlling the virus. On schools, I don't want to add to the chaos that will be caused by having all schools closed tomorrow. Many will be closed. It is inevitable more schools are going to have to close, and the government needs a plan for children's learning, but also for working parents. So It is inevitable that more schools are going to close. Many will be closed tomorrow morning. But the more important thing, in a way, is the national restrictions need to come in the next 24 hours. Let's not have the Prime Minister saying, I'm going to do it, but not yet. That's the problem he's made so many times.
Look, maybe this will work politically, but it's still spineless. Waiting till the last minute and then saying it when you know there's no political pushback. A Labour leader who is too scared and is basically trigger happy in terms of firing people or making decisions to appease whatever section of the right-wing press is having a go at him at that time is not going to work. That no Labour leader that does that will win an election. He's endorsed lockdown. Everything he said there is absolutely right. You know, you can't disagree with what he's saying, but this was late. It's failed, okay? Labour could have pushed. They could have worked with teaching unions. They could have put students' and teachers' lives first. Instead, they've gone against the scientists, they've gone against the unions, they've gone against the parents, the teachers, the children, and they've sided with who? The epidemiologists, the scientists? No, they're against them. They've sided with the government. Ridiculous, ridiculous, ridiculous. Young people feel abandoned and let down by this government, and they also feel abandoned and let down by this most unscrupulous opposition. A Labour Party that won't stand up for industrial action is not a Labour Party. This fits in with the history of the Labour Party, basically shafting its core constituencies at key moments. That's what's happening right now, and history will remember the spinelessness, the spineless attitude of Keir Starmer. The caution is absolutely pathetic. That aside, we need more detail. We need, elaboration on this. We've heard talk of close the zoos. We need Keir Starmer to lay out, nothing from the Labour press office yet. I want to see a press conference, and I want to see plans laid out, and I want that to include listen to the teachers' unions, close the schools. That's what I want in there, okay? That has to be done. I want Labour to consult with the teaching unions as part of policy. They're not going to do that. Do you know why they're not going to do that? Well, if I thought they were going to do that, they would have kept Becky Long-Bailey in place. They got rid of her because she was too friendly with the unions. Quite well documented. Also, Labour should really be pushing for a zero COVID strategy. I've seen a lot of the left give up on that. I still think that's the right way to go, particularly if this rollout isn't going to go to plan and is going to drag out longer than we want. Zero COVID remains the way to go. An idea for Keir Starmer would be to do daily press conferences as soon as this goes into a national lockdown, possibly quite a deep one in the vein of March, and it all gets very serious. It would be quite good to see Keir Starmer every day offer alternative leadership. People see it side to side. Johnson, Starmer, very responsible. Get scientists on, ask the government if they can have some of the scientific advisors. Make sure you're both disseminating the same information. Make sure you're being constructive, but offer alternative leadership. I think something like that. It's a very fine balancing act not to look opportunistic, but I think that's right. And I think the last-minute hindsight sniping from Starmer, when we know he could have said things sooner, and we know then he would really have owned the debate, looks more duplicitous. Maybe it will work politically, but it does look duplicitous. It seems to be working, looking at the polling. Want to see leadership from Labour. That's, they've got that opportunity now going into another crisis. Instead of having the government rally around the flag and rally around the Tories, have them rally around the flag and rally around Labour. Now, good that we've said something, good we've come off the fence. I want them to keep the initiative. I want them to keep pushing, keep the initiative, and now actually lambast them on schools, lambast them on all these things, and propose alternative solutions. Do that tomorrow, okay? Labour are on the fence at the worst possible time, and they need to get off it. And finally, before the end of the show, Julian Assange's partner has said a decision to extradite the WikiLeaks co-founder to the US would be, quote, politically and legally disastrous for the UK on the eve of the judge's ruling. Assange, 49, faces an 18-count indictment, allegedly a plot to hack computers, and a conspiracy to obtain and disclose national defence information in a case critics have decried as a dangerous attack on press freedom. At the Old Bailey on Monday, the district judge Vanessa Barista, something, will deliver her decision, her decision on whether he should be extradited to face the charges in the US, where his lawyers say he faces up to 175 years in jail if convicted. The US government says the sentence is likely to be between 4 and 6 years. Before the ruling, Stella Morris, who has 2 children with Assange, said a decision to allow extradition would not only be an unthinkable travesty for her partner, but would damage cherished British freedoms. She wrote in the Mail on Sunday, it would rewrite the rules of what it is permissible to publish here. Overnight, it would chill free and open debate about abuses by our own government, and by many foreign ones too. In effect, foreign countries could simply issue an extradition request saying that UK journalists, or Facebook users for that matter, have violated their censorship laws. The press freedoms we cherish in Britain are meaningless if they can be criminalised and suppressed by regimes in Russia or Ankara, or by prosecutors in Alexandria, Virginia. Someone says, don't undervalue the safe pair of hands feeling with Keir Starmer. That's what he's got going for him, the safe pair of hands feeling. Turns out post-populism works quite well in the middle of a crisis. When it comes to rebuilding, I don't know, but in the middle of a crisis, shapes up pretty nicely. He may yet form the next government. We will have to wait and see. So solidarity with Julian Assange. We're all Julian Assange, and dear God, I want to see those normal, tedious sections of the liberal establishment speak up. Of course they won't. I reiterate, as his partner says, if he is extradited, the effects on justice and the perception of justice will be chilling. And it will be a final middle finger from the establishment letting you know this is not a free country. There is not such a thing as free press. And our ability to scrutinise the bullies, the politicians, the corrupt, the establishment of the world is limited to how much they permit us. And I've not really heard anything from anyone in Labour on this. I should be hearing it, but I'm not. Where's human rights lawyer Starmer at? You know, this is not some sort of lefty thing. This is deadly serious civil rights stuff. Civil liberties, sorry. This is really, you know, this is basic stuff. I really hope Trump takes action, but it's not happened yet. Maybe it will happen at the last minute. I don't know. Presumably some operators in the deep state don't want him to. Just the general foreign policy establishment seem to think he's ad hoc to Russia. And that therefore lies the moral bankruptcy of the establishment, the liberal establishment. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you for listening. My name's Toby Lopati Mesme. This has been another edition of MesmePolitics. Subscribe and tell your friends. I'll be back for Monday, first week back at doing whatever you're doing from 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So subscribe, notifications on, tell your friends, and we'll see you soon. It's just gone 7:33. Have a nice rest of your Sunday.